like to thank Brother Tony for leading us in that awesome singing. If you would please turn your Bible to John chapter 14 and verse 27. John chapter 14 and verse 27. I want to do a little exercise with you to start off. I want everybody to close their eyes. And as your eyes are closed, I want you to go to your happy place. I want you to go to that peaceful place where it's like, hey, if I need to relax, if I need to find peace, this is where I'm going to go. So I'm going to give you 5 seconds, and then we'll open our eyes. All right. Wasn't that nice? That was really nice, right? Just to kind of relax, go to a nice place. We're going to be talking about peace tonight, and I think this lesson comes at a good time, not just because of what's happening now, but I would say what has been happening over kind of the last 5-ish years or so has not been the most peaceful of times. There has been a lot of things, a lot of changes to society as a whole, not just in this country, but around the entire globe. There has been a lot of things that have happened that have been chaotic and crazy, and we just need to have some peace. So John chapter 14 and verse 27, what does it say? It says this: "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. Not as the world gives, do I give to you. Let not your hearts be troubled, neither let them be afraid." So we get this idea, right, from this verse that God is going to give us a different peace. Through Jesus, we have a different peace than the world has to offer. Because I had you all close your eyes, and I had you all think of a peaceful situation or something that gave you peace. And this is probably what was on some of your minds, right? Some of you went to probably like an outside area, maybe a forest or some type of just nature, right? You went the nature route. You were, out in the woods, nobody's around, the birds are chirping. Maybe you went at night. Maybe you went in the morning, whatever time you did that, right? You went that route. Or you went the other side of the nature where you went to the beach, right? The waves crashing, the sound of the waves crashing, and then the feeling of the sand on your feet. Okay, cool. Some of you went a little bit different, right? It was like, hey, just me, my morning coffee on the porch, just with the Bible, just easy, right? Easy. Some of you maybe went, hey, I got kids, just a moment without them, right? Without them screaming and yelling, just like anything without them is good with me. Some of you, I know college football and NFL is around, so some of you, it might have been, Saturday, kind of putting on football, relaxing in the recliner, or Sunday afternoon, hopefully after you've been to church, just sitting watching the football games and coming back here to be here tonight instead of, being there still sleeping or whatever, watching whatever game is on. But you see, we have all these different ideas of what peace is. What is peaceful to us may not be peaceful to somebody else. What's peaceful to somebody else may not be peaceful to us. But sometimes all of this can change in an instant. So how many times have you been, you've just been planning that, right? You say, okay, it's Saturday, everything's done for the week, I'm done with work, I'm about to sit on this couch and watch football all day. It's just about to be a glory. It's like my favorite team's playing, they're about to play their rivals, I know they're gonna beat them, all this kind of stuff, and then none of that happens. Right, you get a phone call, somebody needs you to do something. Somebody's moving from the church, and, I got to go help a brother so-and-so move, so, okay, there's my Saturday. Or whatever else have you. You have planned to go to the beach, and now it's raining, and so now you can't go, it's bad thunder, whatever it is, right? These moments, these things, this chaos can happen instantly. All of a sudden, you go from either you're in a peaceful moment, right? Maybe you got there, and then this happened. You're in a peaceful moment, and now it's chaos, or you're planning for this peaceful moment, and you couldn't get there because of chaos. This is common. This is life. This is what happens to every person, no matter who you are. All of these things happen. Life can be that way. I have an example of my profession. We live in this, right? No one, as a fireman, we go to shift and we're normal people, so we want to relax, we want to have a good day. No, we don't expect I mean, we expect things to happen that are bad, but we don't want them to happen. We want to have a chilled time where, nobody calls 911 and we just sleep and play video games all day. Perfect. It doesn't happen that way, not for all of us. Maybe where UL was stationed, but not for me, right? Not for me, so literally this happens to us in the most dramatic of fashions. We go from the dead of sleep, right? The calmness and peace that is sleep. By the way, that's my peaceful situation. It's just me in my bed just knocked out. But so we go from the calm of sleep to ding, 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 lights flashing, and then now, hey, within a minute we have to be in a truck rolling down the road to who knows what, right? Bad car accident, fire, medical incident, whatever. We go from peace to chaos in moments. And that's a great representation of what this life is like, what this life can be like. But Jesus and God somehow offer peace amongst all the chaos, offer a calm within the storm, and we'll kind of get to that. We'll get examples of that later. But Jesus was no stranger of these occurrences. Jesus wasn't somebody who this did not happen to, and I think sometimes we miss that. So let us recall the story of the feeding of the 5,000 in Mark chapter 6. If you want to turn there and kind of read it, I'm not going to read it for the sake of time, but if you want to come and kind of familiarize yourself with the story of Mark chapter 6 and the feeding of the 5,000. So before this happened, earlier chapters and earlier, Jesus is kind of, his ministry's rolling, right? He's having a good time. He's calling his disciples. He's sending them out to do different various tasks and spread the gospel in his name. And some of it is not the best, but for the most part, he's not running into too much trouble as of yet, right? So he's catching traction. I would say this is kind of a peaceful time if it was Jesus and his disciples, right? And so then, bam, all of a sudden, what happens? John the Baptist, his dear friend, has died, right? The disciples come back with news. They're telling him, hey, John Baptist died. He's having to take care of all that, right? In the midst of all that, he just got all this preaching and all this stuff has happened. His friend has just died, and now he's trying to kind of escape this. He's trying to get away from the crowds and the people that are all and just all over him, and he's trying to get away, but what happens is they chase him. These people are chasing Jesus around. They literally chased him around the water to get to him. And what does it say? He has compassion on them. He sees them and he has compassion on them, and so he feeds them. He feeds them, he gives them everything they want. But could you imagine being in Jesus' shoes, right? He's like, man, I was doing well. I was, everything was going well. We were preaching the gospel. I was feeding. I was doing all these things, helping people and healing them and doing all these things. Now I hear that my friends died, and then in the midst of that, now all these people are chasing me that I have to now attend to and feed and all this stuff. A lot of times it's easy for us to forget that Jesus dealt with some of the same things that we deal with. And we say, oh yeah, I know that, I remember that. Yeah, sure, Jesus dealt with the same thing, or he actually dealt with worse. He had all these hardships and all these kind of things. It's easy for us to point at that and say, yes, Jesus dealt with hardships. Jesus dealt with these things. But the nuances and the complexities of simple life, sometimes we can forget that Jesus had that as well. And this is one of those examples. It's not exactly super crazy, but it is, right? He goes from a time of good things happening and a peaceful situation to now he's in the midst of all this chaos. He's in the midst of people tugging him in all types of directions, and he's just trying to grieve his friend, right? He's just trying to grieve the person that died that's close to him. And so you kind of see that Jesus deals with the same things that we deal with. And this should give us peace. In Hebrews chapter 2, verse 17, it says this. It says, therefore, he had to be made like his brothers in every respect, so that he might become a merciful and faithful high priest in the service of God, to make propitiation for the sins of people. So Jesus was just like us, and he had to be made just like us. Why is that? So that we can understand how to have peace like him. Jesus was made to be like us so that we can have peace like Jesus had peace. Isn't that cool? right? God had this master plan. He's like, look, I'm going to send my son from the heavens. I'm going to send him who's like me and made in the image of me. I'm going to do all of this stuff. I'm going to send him to be an example that you can do this, that you can get through this, because he's going to go through the exact same things that you go through in this life. There is nothing different about really the life that Jesus, if you boil it down, there's nothing different about the life that Jesus lived compared to the life that we live every day. He dealt with the same. He woke up, he went to sleep, he ate, he did all the simple things. He had interactions with his friends, with his family. He had all of these things just like we have all of these things. And just like we experience peace and it turns to chaos, he experienced peace and it turned into chaos. But the difference is Jesus understood and learned and got it from the Father of how to attain peace in the midst of chaos. And we're going to look at kind of how that works and what that looks like and what happens. So talking about peace and chaos are on these opposite ends of the spectrum. Peace and chaos are kind of these two separate things, and they exist in these two separate realms, right? So let me ask you some examples. What's more peaceful, right? The sound of a waterfall or the zoo full of animals, right? I mean, everybody kind of understands that waterfalls are, I don't know if maybe somebody hasn't been to a waterfall, but they're pretty peaceful if you just go and stand next to one and just look at it and just hear the sounds. It's actually really, really awesome and peaceful. What about like a flowing river rapid or a middle school lunchroom, right? Like, man, I was in middle school. It was horrible. You can't hear your own thoughts. It's terrible. Now, don't get me wrong. These sounds that I mentioned actually aren't that quiet. Right? If you've ever been next to a significantly large waterfall, like I don't know how many people have been to Niagara Falls. Anybody? Was it quiet? Right? Was it quiet? But was it peaceful? So how does that work, right? We'll talk about that a little later. I have a pretty good analogy of how that works, right? But these things, we know that they're peaceful, and then we know the contrast, we know the other side and what's chaotic, right? Because in the midst of something that is loud, right, a waterfall, a rapid, all these type of things, there is a certain uniformity to it, right? Although it be loud, although could be overwhelming, just it's a uniform sound that isn't crazy. As opposed to a zoo, there's a bunch of different animals making a bunch of different sounds, and they're all just wild and crazy. And the same thing with the middle school lunchroom. It might actually be a zoo. I don't know. Maybe I'm talking about the same thing here. These sounds are all over the place. They're crazy. They're happening. There's no uniformity. There's nothing to hold on to, right? Life can be like this. Life can be like these sounds that are all over the place, right? Pulling you in all types of different directions, asking you of all different types of things. But there is a voice, Jesus' voice, that is able to cut through all of that noise and give you that sense of uniformity. And Jesus never calls us necessarily loudly, right? The Bible never really says that he calls out in a crazy way, right? It says that he softly and tenderly calls, because his voice, like that waterfall, it's the thing. It can be overwhelming and things can be loud around, but there's something about the uniform voice of Jesus that cuts through the noise and gets right to the heart of the ear. Right, that gets right to the heart of the issue that you may be dealing with, and it's easy to listen to, but you just have to be attuned to it. Right, John chapter 10 talks about Jesus being the good shepherd and calling out to his sheep, and the sheep recognize his voice. Right, that the sheep can recognize his voice no matter what's going on, no matter who's around, because the sheep are trained to recognize the voice of Jesus. And we, being Christians, we being God's sheep, we need to be that way. We need to be able to recognize that there is a voice, that there is someone calling, and it is Jesus. And it's soft and it's tender, and these things are going on in the outside world, but that voice we can still decipher it from all the other noise, from all the other things that are going on around. But let's jump back, right? Let's jump back to the feeding of the 5,000. let's jump back for a second, kind of realize something that is kind of interesting that Jesus does in this scenario. So Mark chapter 6 and verses 31 through 33, it says, come away by yourselves to a desolate place and rest for a while. For many were coming and going, and they had no leisure even to eat. And they went away in the boat to a desolate place by themselves. Now many saw them going and recognized them, and they ran there on foot from all the towns and got there ahead of them. So this is the people chasing Jesus. This is them kind of chasing him, kind of figure out where he is, and they come up to him. And we know the kind of the story. He has compassion on them. He feeds them. All right, so jumping down to verse 45 and 46, Jesus does something very interesting. It says, immediately after all of this, after all the feeding, after all this happens, immediately he made his disciples get into the boat and go before him to the other side, to Bethsaida, while he dismissed the crowd, and after he had taken leave of them, he went on the mountain to pray. So Jesus, after all of this happens, right, we got to remember the type of day he's having, right? He's having a kind of a rough-ish day where he finds out his friend is dead, and then people are chasing him. He has to feed him, all this kind of stuff. But immediately after he sends his disciples away, he sends them to the other side, and he dismisses the crowd. What's that about? What's that about, Jesus? I understand you're having a rough day, but like your whole goal is ministry. Your whole goal is to be there for the people. You just fed them. You have them right where you want them, right? You're preaching, gospel. You're preaching salvation. You're preaching these things. Why would you take this opportunity to dismiss them, right? This is like they're ready. Their spiritual or not spiritual. Their physical form has been fed. Why don't we feed them with the good stuff, the spiritual stuff? And I think that Jesus has the right idea here. He needs a process because Jesus, much like us, is still a human being, right? He's still a person. He still has emotions. He still has feelings. He still has all these things that he needs to process. And so in order for him to keep his sanity, in order for him to keep up with his own health, he dismisses the crowd. Sometimes for us, we have a hard time dismissing the crowd because we take it on ourselves of saying, you know what, this is what God calls us to do, right? This is what God called Jesus to do, was to preach the gospel, right? So why doesn't he do this? So why we need to do that? We need to be, every time something happens, we need to be the ones doing it. We need to be the ones pushing for it. We need to have all these things. Well, sometimes in order to have peace, you have to say no to what is important to say yes to what is vital. Right? Your peace, your sanity, your health is vital. The importance of someone else and them experiencing the gospel, very important. Not trying to say that's not important, but if you are not in the mental health space to do that effectively, then you're not doing anything at all for the people. And so Jesus might not have been in the right headspace, might not have been able to do this in an effective manner. And so what he does is he dismisses the crowd. He dismisses them. He goes off by himself, and he goes and prays. And this isn't the only example that we see Jesus doing this. Jesus does this throughout a lot of scripture where he goes by himself. He goes and separates himself from all the chaos, from all the things that are happening, so that he can just be by himself and pray. And so sometimes to have peace with ourselves, to have peace in general, we have to say no to what is important, what is very important, to say yes what is vital, which is our own relationship with the Father and our own peace with ourselves. Sometimes, again, we have to say yes or no to what is important to say yes to what is vital. So we talked about, and we've mentioned this before, and I said I would get back to it. We talked about how peace is in contrast to chaos. And the perfect analogy of this is we talk about storms, right? The storms are very, very chaotic things by nature, right? Storms are something that it doesn't matter who you are, right? Where you live, you have experienced some type of storm in a physical sense, right? Doesn't matter if you live in Florida, which you experience a lot of them, or if you live in, I don't know, name another place. You've experienced some type of storm, whether it's a thunderstorm, just a light rainstorm, snowstorm, hailstorm, whatever it is, you've experienced what a storm is like. So on some level, we all understand storms. We all get it. But the metaphor is that storms happen not only in a physical sense, but happen in a spiritual sense, right? Happen just amongst how we live our daily life. And we are promised, and God says, I can give you peace amidst all the storms that life has to throw at you. So how does that work? How are you able to do this? Well, let's look at the story of him actually calming a physical storm. Once again, for the sake of time, we won't look at it, we won't dive into the scripture and read every verse, but let's just summarize the story, right? Let's start off by talking about what were most of his apostles that were with him. What was a good majority of the clientele that was hanging around Jesus? They were fishermen. There's a lot of the guys that were fishermen. They spent some time on boats, and also this was the most effective kind of way of traveling. This was, one of the ways that a lot of people traveled. They traveled by boat. They were used to being in water. And so, especially as fishermen, this is their job. Fishermen. This was their job. This is what they did. This is their profession. So to say that they didn't know what it was like to be on the water, what it was like to be on some rough seas, that would be selling it if you were to try to talk somebody into saying, they were just not used to it. So this storm comes, this rough storm comes, and it's rocking the boat. I could just picture it, rocking the boat back and forth. And they're starting to freak out. They're just like, I don't know what's going on, right? Like they've never been in a storm before, like they're not fishermen, whatever. What's Jesus doing? Jesus is asleep. Me, right? Jesus, okay, cool. They come to Jesus, they're like, hey, Jesus, what? We're all gonna die, And I mean, this is how I picture it, probably not an accurate representation. Don't quote me on this, but I picture it was like, Jesus like, stop. And then it stops. And he's like, cool. You guys good? Everybody good? We good? You guys trust me now or what? Can I go back to sleep, right? What an amazing, I'm playing that down, but what an amazing story in all seriousness, right? They come to Jesus and they're thinking they are going to die. Like this is it, right? They've been in this situation before. So for these guys to come to him in this situation, it must have been a bad storm. They're like, man, what are we gonna do, right? They come to Jesus. They're like, I don't know what you can do, but you got to do something. And Jesus just, peace be still. Water's just like, whoop, okay. Jesus said it, so I'm going to do it, right? This is the type of peace that Jesus offers us amidst our storms. Because we all understand being there. We all understand that sometimes we've dealt with storms before. We've dealt with these things before. Some of us have lived a longer life more than others, and then one storm comes and you're like, this is the one. This is the one that's gonna do me over. This is it. I don't know how or why or what's gonna happen with this storm. And you come to Jesus, and I hope you come to Jesus, and I hope you realize that he has the same reaction in your life that he has in this passage. He's not concerned, right? He's concerned with your well-being and all of these things, but as far as the storm goes, as far as you thinking that this is the worst thing that can happen, he looks at it and he goes, it's fine. Be still. It's cool. Storm over and avoid it, right? Isn't that cool? Isn't that awesome to know that Jesus is just nonchalant about the storms that are going on in our life, about the things in our life that trouble us, that keep us up at night, that give us anxiety, that give us all these types of things. And Jesus is like, that's it? That's all you're worried about? I got that. I took care of that. You don't have to worry about that anymore. But in order to understand this, in order to have this peace, there's some vital things that we have to do. If we go to the story and we break it down, the disciples or in the apostles in this story, they kind of have trust but don't have trust, right? So they're in this storm. They're with Jesus. Jesus is sleeping. They're going through all of this stuff. They have the trust that they can go to Jesus and he's going to make it okay, right? So they have that trust. They go to him and he does make it okay. Where they're kind of not trusting is that they maybe think that Jesus is going to die on this boat with them, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, they're with Jesus, and so they're with the person, and they, like, you know, they might not know the full story, but it's like, hey, you're not going to die. If he's sleeping, I'm pretty sure it's not as bad as you think. He's going to figure it out, right? So they kind of have trust, but they don't have trust. But we have to have trust, one, and patience is the other. These two things are extremely hard when we're going through storms. Extremely hard. I'm not going to sit up here and tell you that this is easy. I'm not going to sit up here and tell you that, yeah, trust and patience, that's it. Yeah, you got that all day. Everybody could do it. It's a simple thing. You just have trust and patience, and you'll be okay. No, these things are extremely, extremely hard. But how do we train it? How do we look at certain things that Jesus has told us, that Jesus wants us to know, in order to strengthen this trust and strengthen this patience? 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 13, it says this. It says, no temptation has overtaken you that is common to men. It says, God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond your ability, but with the temptation, he will also provide a way of escape that you may be able to endure it. So that's something right there to kind of cling on to. All of these storms, anything that happens, anything that you're tempted with, God is faithful. I want you to attach to that, just that right there. God is faithful. He won't let anything happen to you. This says he won't let you be tempted beyond your ability. And with the temptation, he's even going to provide a way for you to escape, right? With the things in this life that are hitting you, with the things that are going on, he has it all under control. One, that you can go through it. So he believes in you, and he's giving you the way to do it, right? But that's still hard. It doesn't matter that happens. It's still difficult. No one says that this isn't tough, but we have an out. We have something to cling on to and hold on to. But then that's where the patience comes in, because sometimes you are holding on, right? The disciples, I'm sure, and the apostles on the boat, they were holding on, right? They're okay, when's the storm going to be over? When the storm's going to be over? And it's like, okay, cool, okay. That's when you turn to Jesus. And Jesus, in this story, calms the storm immediately, but sometimes the storm is going to go on a little bit longer. Jesus is there. Jesus is going to be there holding your hand through it, but he's got to carry you through the storm a little bit longer because he has more lessons for you to learn, more things for him to teach you. That's tough, right? What is the passage in Psalms? How long, O Lord? Sometimes you're going to be asking that. How long, O Lord? But keep this in mind. God is faithful. Another verse in Isaiah chapter 26 and verse 3 and 4, it says, you keep in him perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on you because he trusts in you. Trust in the Lord forever, for the Lord God is an everlasting rock. Our God is an everlasting rock. In all the storms and everything that we have going on, he is a rock. He is not moved, right? Kind of going back to that sleeping incident. Nothing phases him. He's able, while your storms and stuff is a big deal to you and you're going crazy, Jesus is there, steady, sleeping, holding on. I got this. He's looking at you saying, I got this. Nothing that can happen is going to be able to move me. Nothing that can happen is going to be able to overcome me. And as long as you have me, nothing's going to be able to overcome you. Jesus is telling us this. Jesus is pleading that we have this. But we have to have that trust. We have to have that patience. 2 Thessalonians 3:16 says, now may the Lord of peace himself give you peace in all times and in every way. The Lord be with you all. This is kind of a book close, but he's saying in every way may you have peace. In all times and in every way. God is able to do that for us. God is able to give us peace in all times and in every way. In every storm, in every circumstance, in every hardship, in every trouble, whatever it is, God is our rock. We just have to trust and believe in that. And then the last verse again, the verse we started with, John chapter 14, verse 27, it says, "Peace I leave with you. My peace I give to you. Not as the world gives do I give to you. So let not your hearts be troubled, neither let them be afraid." The peace that God offers us isn't based on the circumstances really that we're going through. It isn't based on anything that we think about. It's based on God and him being a rock. It's based on Jesus, who has lived through these things and is our example, that we can go through peace, or we can have peace even amongst the storm. Because the world's going to teach you that there is no way that you can have peace. There's no way that you can have joy. There's no way that you can have anything good while life is coming at you this hard. But if we as Christians lived by that, then we would never have any hope. We would never have anything to look forward to. We would never have any, salvation would be almost irrelevant kind of to us if that's how we lived our life, because storms are going to happen. Storms are something that are almost guaranteed in life. Christian or non-Christian, you're going to go through trials. Life just is that way. Even for the Son of God, life was that way. So for the world to say, oh, you can't have peace while these things are going on, we should look at the world and be like, yes, I can, because Jesus did it, because I have an example of a perfect person who gave that power to his Son and lived in this world and had peace amidst the storm. He had peace amongst all the things that were going on, even to the point where he laid down his life so that all of us can have peace, that all of us can have salvation, that all of us can have the life in heaven that is promised. We have to understand, though, that this peace comes at the cost, or comes with trust and patience, which are things we have to practice, right? Which are things we have to put into our daily routine of trusting that, one, Jesus is going to bring us out of the storm, but two, it may not be when we think it's going to be. It may not be how we think it's going to be. It's going to be something that happens. We just don't know how, why, or when. Or not how. We know how. We don't know why or when. The world has a different version of peace than we have. God offers us a peace that is different. God offers us a peace that, if we're listening, because the words of Jesus calls out to us amidst the storm, and he says, "Be still." And the storm listens. The storm listens, the storm hears and says, "All right, enough." So maybe you're struggling, and like I said, I know this isn't easy. Life isn't easy. Christian life especially isn't easy. And so maybe you're here and you're struggling with this idea of, how can I have peace amidst the storm? How can I have peace with all these things going on in my life? How can I have peace when X, Y, Z is happening, and then the bills are due and the kids are going crazy and my mom's yelling at me about my homework and whatever happens, right? How can I have peace? Because Jesus had peace. And maybe you don't understand anything I'm talking about. Maybe you're like, I don't even know. Like, I know things are going bad in my life, but I just want, I want that peace that you're talking about. I want, like, the things that you're saying sound really good. How do I achieve that peace? And it's simple. You put on the person who gave you the example of the peace, right? You come to Jesus and you give your life to him. You give your trust to him, and you're patient in saying that, I know that God will deliver me out of this. I know that one of these days, when it's all said and done, I'm going to be in heaven, and I'm going to look at those storms, or think about I'm not even going to think about those storms, because there's no reason to. There's nothing in heaven that is even related to the storms in life that I went through. Those storms are child's play compared to the heaven that we are promised. And so if you're here and you need anything from the elders or anything, if you need prayers, we ask that you please come now as we stand and as we sing.